My name is Evelyn Hart, and at 25 I didn't expect a Christmas present to redraw my life. Our family house in Wellesley looked like a winter postcard, snow on the hedges, a fire in the hearth, a tree brushing the ceiling. From the sidewalk I glimpsed something impossible to ignore, a new BMW in the drive with a red bow. Inside, my parents Richard, a chief financial officer, and Dr. Lila Monroe Hart, a cosmetic surgeon, played genial hosts. They've always been generous, just not evenly. My sister Bianca, 5 years younger, is the adored one. As kids, she shopped designer while I learned coupons. At 16, she unboxed a new phone while I coaxed an old laptop awake. I finished college with honors, took a junior marketing role, and rented a one-bedroom 40 minutes away. I set aside $200 a month, but my 10-year-old sedan kept coughing at stoplights, its repairs chewing through that small cushion. Maybe that's why I let December raise a fragile hope. If not a miracle, perhaps a nudge helped with a safer car, a gesture that said I wasn't invisible. I spent weekends finding gifts I could afford: a first edition paperback for my dad, a hand-dyed scarf for my mom, wireless earbuds for Bianca. On Christmas Eve, I arrived early in my one good sweater dress. The house glittered. Garlands traced the banisters. Warm lights pooled across the foyer. A caterer's team ferried platters. Bianca glowed, narrating sorority plans and an internship my father had arranged. When I mentioned a campaign I'd helped land, the conversation skimmed past. After dinner, my father clapped his hands, eyes bright. Before presents, he said, "Let's step outside." Cold air bit as we spilled onto the steps. There it was, the BMW, glossy and immaculate bow, blazing under the porch lights. "For you, B," my mother sang, pressing a key fob into Bianca's palm. Bianca squealed, tears smudging her mascara as she slid behind the wheel and pulsed the engine. My parents watched, delighted. I stood a few paces back, keeping my face calm as the exhaust curled into the night. Inside again, gifts resumed, youngest to oldest. I stacked my presents within reach and settled on the sofa's edge. When my turn came, my mother placed a small silver-wrapped box in my hands, light as lint. I unthreaded the ribbon and lifted the lid. A pink plastic piggy bank blinked up at me. $1 folded tight peeked from the slot. My father cleared his throat in the tone he uses for policy. "It's symbolic," he said. "A start toward real savings. We want you to focus on independence," my mother added, smiling as if she were giving me good news. "Every little bit counts." Bianca giggled. "You can save for something cute. Or, the bus." Heat stung my eyes, but I refused to let tears do the speaking. I thanked them because good manners have a spine of their own and set the pig beside me. Conversation swirled back to winter trips and playlists for Bianca's first road test weekend. When it grew late enough to excuse myself, I stood, said I had an early morning, and collected my coat. No one followed me to the door. Outside, the BMW's chrome caught the moon like a mirror. I drove away in my sputtering sedan through drifting flurries. The piggy bank buckled into the passenger seat like a joke I didn't understand yet. I didn't know the real shock of the night was waiting just beyond midnight. I didn't sleep. I tried. I made tea, washed the lipstick off my one good mug, scrolled through photographs of dogs in knit sweaters. Anything to sand down the edges of the night. The apartment was too quiet, the kind of quiet that turns every refrigerator hum into a siren. On the counter, the pink pig sat where I'd set it, round and ridiculous under the yellow cone of the stove light. The single bill peeking from its slot looked like a tongue. I reached for my purse to plug in my dying phone and dumped its contents onto the laminate lip balm, a receipt for gas, the card my mother had handwritten in her perfect medical script, "Proud of your independence," and an envelope I didn't recognize. Blue, unsealed, no writing. Something in me went still. I slid a finger under the flap and shook out a stack of papers. Registration, insurance cards, purchase agreement, the BMW's VN and mileage dates and signatures and stamps. I scanned down to the owner line and felt my body misplace its weight. Owner Evelyn Monroe Hart. My name. I checked again as if the letters might rearrange when I blinked. The policy ID matched the temporary card in the packet. The insurer was our family's longtime carrier. The dates were barely 2 weeks old. I moved to the table, spreading the documents flat, my vision tinting at the edges. If the car was registered to me, that meant any tickets, any accident, any lawsuit could trace to me. My record, my premiums, my liability. Bianca would be driving a high-performance vehicle with a history of distraction and speed, and if she drifted over a median or tapped a bumper, the bill would land in my mailbox. Heat rose in my chest, then dropped heavy and cold. Anger was a flare. Fear was an anchor. Why register it to me? The answer came fast and sour insurance. Bianca's record would have made the premiums brutal. Mine was spotless. A tidy workaround. Creative, I could hear my father say when he talked about tax strategy or corporate cash flow efficient. The papers told part of the story. I needed the rest. Years ago, when my parents finally acknowledged that the home Wi-Fi is being weird was not an IT diagnosis, I'd set up their network, created logins, installed a remote client on my laptop so I could help from my place. They'd never asked me to remove it. In their world, assistance moved only one direction. My hands shook as I opened my laptop and launched the client. The connection pulsed to life. I could see the familiar desktop background Aspen last winter, my father's email icon lit with numbers. I hesitated. This felt like trespass. It also felt like survival. I searched policy vehicle BMW Veronica. The results populated threads stacking like a file tower, and I clicked through. 2 weeks earlier, their insurance agent had written, given Ms. Bianca Hart's recent incidents, 2 at-fault claims. 1 speeding citation adding an SUV with this value and horsepower would increase premiums approximately 3.4. Strongly advise against listing her as primary driver. My father's reply had the crisp tone he used in boardrooms. We've found a cleaner solution. Register under our older daughter Evelyn. She has an excellent record and will be the named insured. The vehicle will be used primarily by our younger daughter for short campus commutes. No need to complicate the policy file with that detail. We'll handle usage internally. Proceed with the attached information. Attached a scan of my driver's license. I swallowed air like it could steady me. There were more emails, logistics, delivery, timing. A casual aside from my mother about adding a nice bow because it would look good in photos. Not one message discussed my consent. Not one acknowledged risk to me. I sat back hard in the chair, laptop warm against my thighs. There was no misinterpretation to untangle, no you misheard what we meant. I imagined Bianca's laughter when she revved the engine, my mother's obliging smile when she handed me the box with the pig, my father's symbolic start sermon. The choreography revealed itself, the bow, the keys, the lesson for the capable one. The performance had always had a backstage, and I'd just found the ropes and pulleys. The clock on the stove blinked 2:42. I stared at the pig, at the papers, at my packed gift wrap still in a plastic bag by the door. A thought uncurled, too wild to be rational, and too rational to be ignored. The car was legally mine. The registration said so. The insurance card said so. If it stayed in their driveway, I remained the shell corporation for their risk, the fall guy in a cashmere sweater. I didn't so much make a decision as realize one had been made. I pulled a duffel from the closet floor and worked in a fast transfolding jeans, underwear, sweaters, the old hoodie I slept in when nightmares clamped down. Laptop charger. Passport and birth certificate from the file folder under my bed, because once you start taking your life seriously, you take the paperwork too. I grabbed the thin envelope of cash I kept taped under a drawer, because living lean had taught me that banks close and cars die at the worst possible times. I tore a page from a notebook and wrote 10 words in clean block letters. Thanks for the car registered to me. I'm keeping it. I signed it with my initials. It was not a manifesto. It was not a scream. It was a record. At 3:07, I was parallel parked a block from my parents' house, engine off, fingers numb on the steering wheel. Snow ticked against the windshield like sand. Their block glowed the gentle orange of the streetlights. The garlands along the porch railing looked like they were breathing. Keys. I needed keys. The side door opened to the mudroom. I'd oiled that hinge as a teenager when it squealed and woke the dog. No one had thought to thank me then, but the silence thanked me now. The mudroom smelled like cedar and laundry soap. My heart pounded as if it wanted to sprint ahead without me. Bianca's designer tote was on the entry table, mouth open, a handful of lipsticks and a key fob winking from the pocket. I slipped the fob into my palm and set the note where the tote had been, weight for weight. For a second, my reflection in the hall mirror caught me, a woman in a dark coat with a jaw she didn't recognize, and then I ghosted back into the cold. The BMW answered the fob with a soft blink. The cabin was warm leather and new plastic, the scent of a future I'd never been invited to imagine. My old Honda had trained me to move with the care of a nurse navigating a hospital at midnight. Quiet doors, mindful feet. I eased the BMW into neutral, rolled down the driveway on gravity. Started the engine when the front bumper kissed the street. The car purred a cat after a nap. Snow feathered the windshield, the wipers whispered. I watched the house grow smaller in the rear view until it wasn't there at all. I drove without music, without heat, without anything that might confuse the feeling gathering in me. Not joy, not even vengeance. Something simpler and older, the relief of a locked door, the first breath after a too long underwater swim. 50 miles west, under the humming fluorescence of a motel that rented by the week. I handed over a card, signed with a hand that steadied halfway through my last name, and carried my bag down a carpeted hallway that smelled like chlorine and cigarettes. I fell onto a bedspread printed with geometric shapes, and woke 3 hours later to the sound of a neighbor's shower and a voiceless cry lodged under my tongue. My phone, plugged into the wall, vibrated itself across the nightstand. Calls stacked, Mom to 12, it's Bianca. Unknown numbers, texts, signs scrolled in a river of bubbles. The first were question marks, then directives, then threats dressed as concern. The car's gone. Call us now. If you took the BMW, bring it back within the hour. This is theft. Consider what you're doing to your family. We will involve law enforcement. I listened to one voicemail, my father-controlled fury cracking the syllables, and stopped. I wasn't going to let his voice colonize the room. If they went to the police, they'd have to explain why the car was in my name. If they wanted a courtroom, they'd have to say the quiet part loud. Richard Hart didn't say quiet things loud. I could hear Jessica's voice in my head, dry and bracing. Stop spiraling. Make a list. Do the next right thing. I called her. It rang once. Evelyn. Are you okay? Your mom called me at 6 like I ran a switchboard. I'm not in danger, I said, and then I told her everything because if you don't say the truth out loud, it calcifies in your throat. She was silent long enough for me to picture her pinching the bridge of her nose. That is, wow. Illegal. If not illegal, then aggressive stupidity. Insurance fraud, I said. The words tasted like metal. You need a lawyer, now. She rattled through names until she landed on one she trusted, her cousin's husband in Portland. He's solid, no nonsense. If he doesn't know the answer, he knows who does. Portland, I repeated, as if the word were a latitude line. Come west, she said. Crash on my couch until you don't need to. You won't be the first. Portland was not a plan. It was a direction. Sometimes direction is enough. I left the motel before noon, avoiding freeways with cameras and coffee that tasted like scorched almonds. The BMW purred under my hands, scandalously responsive. With every mile, the invisible cable that tied me to my parents' house thinned. On the second evening, I crossed into Oregon, under a sky the color of bruised apricots, and exhaled something I'd been holding since 9th grade. Jessica's apartment smelled like basil and laundry. She handed me a spare key and a hug we both pretended not to need. The next morning, I met Peter Wilson in an office with plants that looked like they'd been forgiven for their faults. He wore an unremarkable suit and an expression that invited honesty without promising absolution. I handed him the packet. He read silently, lips moving scantly over certain lines. He asked a few questions, practical and precise. Short version, he said. Setting the papers down, the vehicle is titled and insured in your name. Absent a written gift agreement designating another recipient, the law reads the paperwork. They'd argue intent, but intent without documentation is error. What if they report it stolen? Theft requires lack of permission and lack of right. You have a right by registration. When an ownership dispute is between family members with mixed signals, it's almost always civil, not criminal. Police hate domestic property fights. Worst case, they take a report and tell everyone to get lawyers. What about the fact that they plan for Bianca to drive it? He tapped the insurance card. If they misrepresented the primary driver to obtain lower premiums, that's their problem. If Bianca had an accident and an investigator discovered the underlying facts, you'd get dragged through the investigative mud because of your name on the documents, but the misrepresentation would be unflattering for your parents. A corporate officer being careless with insurance disclosures, not a headline he wants. I hadn't realized how shallow my breaths had become until I felt my lungs remember themselves. What should I do? 2 letters, he said. 1 to your parents' counsel if they retain one stating you've taken possession of property registered to you and will maintain it until a court orders otherwise. 2 to the insurer requesting confirmation of current coverage and removal of any listed drivers you don't authorize. Do not drive as though you are invincible. Assume they are inspecting every move you make. Keep the car garaged or in secure lots when possible. And start building your separation: new address, new job, new routines. Boundaries are legal before they're emotional. I can pay your retainer, I said, thinking of the envelope of emergency cash of the small savings account I'd nursed for months, of the indignity of how satisfying it felt to say I can pay. We'll keep it reasonable, he said. Also, if you haven't already, freeze your credit. If they were willing to register a car in your name without asking, I don't trust their respect for lines. When I left his office, the rain had started soft, as if the city were misting itself. I sat in the BMW and read the draft letter he'd emailed me on my phone. Ms. Hart has taken possession of vehicle identification number, redacted, registered and insured in her name. Any assertion of theft is unfounded. Please direct future correspondence to my office. Plain, pointed, like a lock clicking. Portland didn't care who I'd been in Wellesley. No one asked where I got my coat or my scars. Jessica's friends folded me in with the ease of people who had practiced making family out of strangers. We ate dumplings from a place with steam-clouded windows, watched a band play in a bar that used to be a laundromat, laughed about nothing, because laughing about nothing is what keeps your bones from rattling loose. I found a month-to-month sublet on a street that smelled like coffee in the mornings and damp leaves at night. The landlord, a woman with kind eyes and keys jangling like chimes, didn't care that I wore the same sweater 3 days in a row as I blitzed through online job boards. I took a temp shift at a cafe and remembered how to smile at people who needed caffeine more than conversation. My phone still throbbed with attempts to breach my new perimeter. I blocked numbers. I asked Peter to handle anything that showed up in a stamped envelope. When a message found me through a distant cousin, "They're worried sick. Just bring the car back and be reasonable." I stared at the words until they arranged themselves into something true. They are worried about control. Be reasonable means be small. At night, lying on a mattress that pretended not to notice it was on the floor, I let the tape of the past unreel the forgotten birthday, the missed honor ceremonies, Bianca's flippant, "You're so stable," like stability were a personality defect. I didn't hate them. I hated the role I'd played in my own disappearance. The BMW sat under a carport behind the building. Discreet beneath a cover I bought at an auto supply store that smelled like rubber and oil and boredom. I drove it with caution, downright monastic, compared to the swagger it begged for. At stoplights, I could feel drivers in the next lane measure me a woman at the wheel of something expensive, and I willed myself to be as uninteresting as a mailbox. If I had expected a rush of triumph, it didn't come. What arrived instead was a slow settling like silt in a jar of river water. Anger turned out to be a poor long-term fuel. Intention burned cleaner. Each small decision, buy, detergent, update, resume, learn the barista's names, reintroduced me to the woman under the skin. A week into my new routine, Peter forwarded a scan of a letter from a law firm with a name like a banking family. Demand for return of gifted vehicle. He replied with 3 sentences and attached the registration. The next day he texted silence on their end. As predicted. Predictable. Predictable people with a playbook come unglued when you refuse to run their plays. One afternoon, I parked the BMW 2 blocks away and walked the last stretch under a stretch of sky rinsed clear by rain. I thought about selling it. I wasn't ready. I didn't want to make a major financial decision on a nervous system still nursing bruises. But I made a list: maintenance costs, fuel insurance resale value, because lists were bridges between chaos and choice. Jessica watched me sort piles at the kitchen table. "You know what I like about this version of you?" she said, slicing an apple with a dull knife. "What?" "You look at a mess and ask what's next, not why me. It's very hot." "Hot," I laughed, surprised at the sound. "Boundary hot, growth hot, the rarest kind. Sometimes you need someone to tell you that becoming yourself is attractive." At the coffee shop, I drafted cover letters between milk steaming and espresso shots. I told the truth in lines that still sounded like advertising. I build campaigns that respect an audience's intelligence because I was raised on the opposite. I sent resumes to places that used words like sustainable without wincing and replanted my confidence one interview at a time. Nights on the couch. I scrolled neighborhoods I couldn't afford and bookmarked apartments for a later me who might. I messaged the women's shelter about volunteering to help with resumes and mock interviews. They wrote back with slots. I picked one and wrapped my nervousness in a sweater and showed up. Sitting across from a woman the same age as my mother, who'd fled a house on Christmas Eve because Fists had learned her address, I understood that my story was not the worst story, and the knowledge didn't shrink my pain. It put it in a neighborhood with other houses. The pig came with me. I didn't know why until one morning when the sun found it on the shelf and lit it like a lantern. It had meant to humiliate. Now it was a relic proof of what I refused to accept for another decade. I dropped a coin into it, my own symbolic start, and felt foolish and fierce at the same time. On the 12th day after I left, I woke before the alarm with a buzzing under my skin. The air outside had the metallic smell that comes before rain. I brewed coffee and stood at the window of the sublet, watching a neighbor in plaid pajama pants take out the trash. For the first time in years, the stillness didn't feel like a trap. I knew it wouldn't last. People like my parents believed in resolution, not because they loved peace, but because they hated loose ends. We were a loose end now. There would be a knock or a call from a number I hadn't yet blocked an escalation dressed as sincerity. I didn't dread it the way I thought I would. Confrontation is simpler when you own your name on the paperwork and your name inside your chest. I had letters, a lawyer, and a life that in its tiny newness was already mine. When they came, and they would, I would offer the dignities they had withheld from me: a chair, water, a clear sentence that respected the truth. Until then, I did one small thing that felt like a hinge. I drove the BMW to a self-serve car wash, fed quarters into a machine that shuddered awake, and cleaned the road salt off its paint. Not because I loved the car, because I was done letting neglect be my aesthetic. I dried the hood with a towel and caught my reflection, tired, yes, and thinner than I liked, but unmistakably a woman I recognized. I smiled at her the way you smile at a friend you haven't seen in a while, the one who shows up when it's time to move. When the first fat drops of rain hit the windshield, I didn't hurry. I slid into the driver's seat, buckled in, and checked my mirrors. The engine came to life the way it had on the first night, low and sure, a promise I didn't mistake for a future. I turned onto a street lined with maples and thought, without drama or superstition, I'm not afraid of part 3. On the 13th morning, the rain quits like someone lifted a veil. I brew coffee and open my email to a crisp serifed letter from Peter. We've served notice. Expect a formal response from opposing counsel within the week. Do not engage directly. It's almost funny how tidy words can be when the life they're fencing around is anything but. By afternoon, a text pops through the dam of my blocks because it arrives on an old group thread with cousins I barely know. Landing 5. 10 p.m. R. There's no name, but there doesn't need to be. My father signs like he's approving a wire transfer. Jessica is slicing limes in the kitchen for a picture of something we don't need when I tell her. She sets the knife down with a soft clack. You want me here when they come? I think I want to be alone for the door, I say. But, could you be close in case my brain tries to climb out a window? She nods. I'll be downstairs with a magazine I won't read. They arrive at dusk, a triad with matching luggage and matching faces pinched by travel and disapproval. Even their coats look expensive in a way that drinks the light. Richard's jaw is set so hard, I worry about his enamel. Lila's lipstick is perfect and totally unnecessary on this block. Bianca wears sunglasses despite the cloud cover. She's the only person I know who can turn up to a confrontation accessorized. Evelyn! My father's voice is a gavel. He glances at the BMW under its gray cover, then at me, then at the building, as if zoning laws might be violated by my existence. We can do this here, or we can do it properly with counsel. Here is fine, I say, opening the door and stepping aside. We'll be civil, or it's the sidewalk and everyone goes home. In the elevator, none of us talk. You can hear the elevator cables think in old buildings. It's comforting for reasons I can't explain. Inside my sublet, I gesture to the thrift store chairs and the clean table I worked so hard to make not look like a temporary life. Water, I ask. I offer it because it costs me nothing, And because offering is a choice I get to make now. No, my father says. He remains standing, commanding the room as if gravity takes orders from him. Bianca drifts to the window like she's in a music video. My mother perches on the edge of a chair, her purse clutched in her lap like a small animal. You stole your sister's car. My father begins, and the sentence is such a perfect distillation of the reality he prefers that for a second I'm almost impressed. I took possession of a vehicle registered and insured in my name, I say. There's a difference. It was clearly a gift. He smooths his tie, even though no one here is taking minutes. A ceremonial transfer, if you will, facilitated for efficiency. Facilitated, I repeat. As in you facilitated fraud by using my clean record to slash premiums while exposing me to liability. My mother flinches. Evelyn, fraud is a very ugly word. So is bus. When you use it as a punchline after handing me a pig with $1 in it, I say before I can stop myself. My voice stays even, which feels like a miracle I don't want to examine too closely. Bianca peels off her sunglasses and jabs them into her hair. I need that car, she says, in the voice people use for emergencies like the oven is on fire and a toddler is inside it. Everyone's seen it. I've posted with it. I have plans. I had plans too, I say quietly. Mostly they involve not being a ghost in my own family. Richard exhales through his nose. We're not here to indulge your grievances. We're here to resolve a property dispute. Then let's talk property. I slide a manila folder across the table, the one Peter made me assemble like a student ready for a presentation registration. Proof of insurance. Peter's letter. The insurance emails printed clean and damning. Richard doesn't reach for it. My mother does, her hands shaking almost imperceptibly as she scans the pages. Her whisper finds the room first. James. She only calls him that when she wants him to hear her as a wife and not a witness. Did you send? He cuts a look sharp enough to staple shut. Eleanor. I keep my eyes on my mother because looking at her turns out to be easier. You can read the notes in the margins, I say. Peter organized the statutes. He's efficient like that. Richard finally picks up the papers, flipping with quick, irritated competence until he reaches his own email. We found a cleaner solution. Register under our older daughter, Evelyn. No need to complicate the policy file with that detail. He grunts a sound I've heard before, usually at numbers that refuse to behave, and places the folder back down like it might stain him. You will return the vehicle, he says, as if he can invoice the universe. We will handle paperwork, we will. No, I say. The word is small, an acorn thrown at a tank, and yet the tank stutters. My father blinks. Bianca makes a dismissive sound that doesn't know where to go. My mother inhales like she's swallowing pain. You are making a spectacle, my father says, softening his tone, like he's switching tactics mid-negotiation. You always were dramatic. Spending 4 hours on a snowbank waiting for a tow because my car died isn't drama, I say. It's weather. Watching you swing a key fob and lecture me on self-reliance while registering your generosity to my name isn't drama. It's math. He leans forward. If this is about money, be honest. Name your price. Something old and bitter nips at the back of my throat. It's about consent, I say, and respect, and the basic premise that I am not a line item in your risk management spreadsheet. Bianca snorts. Oh my God, Eve, you got a car. You're acting like a martyr. I got a bill, I say, keeping my voice steady. An invoice for your choices. If you'd wanted to help me, you would have asked me what help looked like. Maybe it looked like paying for a brake job. Maybe it looked like co-signing a reasonable loan. Maybe it looked like not using me as a shell company for your favorite child's lifestyle. My mother stands, then sits back down like gravity is a conversation she can't finish. Sweetheart, she says in the careful tone she reserves for patience and difficult seasons. We did what we thought was best. We assumed you would understand. You've always understood. I understood that when I won it was quiet, I say, and when Bianca merely showed up it was fireworks. The sentence lands with a dull thud. It's not new. It's just finally said to the people who built it. Richard straightens, and I can see the speech forming. We did our best. We made mistakes. We will do better. The corporate apology that admits nothing and changes less. I hold up a hand. I don't raise my voice. I don't need to. Here's the only offer I'll make, I say. If Bianca wants the BMW, she can buy it from me at a fair market price verified by a third-party dealer. Transfer of title and insurance happens the same day. Otherwise, the vehicle remains with me until I choose to sell or keep it. No, he says, instantly offended by the notion of paying twice for a bow. Then we're done, I say, and something eases in my neck I hadn't realized was clenched. He scoffs. We will sue. Please do, I say. Discovery will be fascinating. I look forward to your deposition on why you misrepresented primary usage to your insurer. My mother's hand finds the edge of the table. Richard, she murmurs, a thread of fear in the syllables. He hates fear in other people. It complicates the simple story where his will is the safest place to stand. Bianca pushes off the window, angry and beautiful and very young. You're ruining everything she says, and the word everything is a small, shiny thing she thinks she owns. My friends are going to think. Let them think, I say, not unkindly. Let them think you learned there are limits. It's not the worst reputation to have. Silence unravels for a moment. In it, I hear a distant door slam on the floor below, and someone laugh in the alley, and a train stitch the city together east to west. We're leaving. My father says finally, because he has to do something. Control hates rooms where it cannot breathe. You'll hear from counsel. You already have, I say, and open the door. On the landing, my mother pauses. Evelyn, she says softly, like we could fold the last 20 years into the smallest pocket we have. We love you. I don't doubt she means it. I just doubt the shape of it. I know, I say, because acknowledging someone's belief is not the same as agreeing to live inside it. The elevator takes them away. The hallway swallows their perfume and cologne, and the static crackle of my father's anger. I lock my door. My hands shake in the shape of a person who is done shaking. Jessica knocks 2 minutes later with a face like a paramedic's. She wraps me in a hug that's all elbows and bravery. You were so calm, she says into my hair. It was unnerving. I might be a little in love with you. Get in line, I say, and the joke lands like a glass of cold water. That night, Peter calls. He'll try one more time on paper, he says. Then he'll fold. There's no clean angle. What about family angles, I ask? The ones where aunts call and say be reasonable, and cousins subtweet, and Uncle Tom emails a sermon about honoring parents. Peter is quiet for a beat. The law can't help there. But you sound like someone who knows what she's honoring. The formal letter arrives 2 days later from a firm whose stationery has the weight of money. Demand to return the gifted vehicle within 72 hours or face immediate legal action. Peter replies with a paragraph so dry it could kindle a campfire. Vehicle is titled and insured to my client. No documentation indicates a gift to another party. Any attempt to characterize possession as criminal is unfounded and will be treated as harassment. He copies the insurance company, attaches the emails, and sees Mihi with a note that reads, breathe, hydrate, ignore. I try to. I really do. But the body remembers its training, and my training is to climb ladders inside myself until the roof looks far enough away to feel safe. When I catch myself pacing the kitchen at 100 a.m., I sit and make a list: laundry, change, oil, water. The Pothos confirm the shelter volunteer shift write one cover letter that does not apologize for existing. Olivia, the neighbor, with a laugh like a bell, invites me over for soup the next evening. It tastes like garlic and patience. They'll get tired, she says, dropping noodles into her bowl like it's a spell. People always get tired when manipulation stops working. Sometimes I think I invented this. I say ashamed the second the sentence exits, like I'm the difficult one, the ungrateful one. You are not difficult, she says, so matter-of-factly. I want to believe her immediately. You did a difficult thing. That's different. On Sunday, I go back to the women's shelter. I sit with a woman named Marybelle, who brings me a folded resume she hasn't updated in 10 years because life swallowed the last 10 years whole. We rebuild it bullet by bullet, and when we're done, she looks at the page like it's a mirror that finally includes her face. On the bus home, not mine. The cities, I write in my notes app. Every little bit counts when it comes from you. Late that night, a text arrives from an unknown number with a Portland area code. Can we talk? Just us. B. I stare until the letters blur. My thumbs hover. I don't owe anyone immediate access to me, not even someone whose tears I braided out of her hair when she was 8 and afraid of thunder. I set the phone down. I let the question become a room I don't enter yet. Monday morning, the sky is the particular free gray that reminds me the Pacific is only an hour away. I walk to the corner cafe for my shift. The manager, who wears flannels like a uniform and knows every regular's drink, waves me to the bar. "You got a letter," he says, handing me an envelope. For a second, I brace for embossed threats. Instead, I find a handwritten note on plain paper. "Ms. Hart," it reads. "We'd be interested in speaking with you about a strategist role. Your cover letter made the rounds." It's from a boutique agency that helps climate nonprofits. I grin like a fool into the espresso steam. Maybe the universe isn't taking sides. Maybe I'm just finally stepping onto the side I should have been on all along. That afternoon, I do the thing I decide matters, because the woman I want to be would do it even if she's scared I call the insurance company myself. I give my policy number. I confirm primary driver me. I remove any listed drivers I did not authorize. The representative's voice is cheerful in the way of people who don't know they're witnessing a hinge in a stranger's life. "All set," she says. "Anything else today?" "Yes," I say. "Please add a note to the file. Any changes require my written authorization." I imagine Richard's face when he meets that sentence. I do not apologize. The predictable silence arrives midweek. No new threats. No new letters. The quiet feels honest in a way the noise never did. The pause is not mercy, it's strategy. But for the first time, strategy doesn't scare me. I have one too, build deep and choose. On Friday, as the late light turns the street to bronze, I see my father's Mercedes nose down the block like a shark. It parks halfway back. The three of them step out smaller under this sky, as if the planes shaved an inch off their hauteur. I breathe once, twice in through my nose, out through my mouth, the way Dr. Chen used to coach me in a group therapy video I watched at 3 a.m. years ago and never told anyone about. A knock, calm measured. I open the door. "We're not here to argue," my mother says, before my father can stage his opening. Her eyes are softer, tired. "We're here to talk." She looks at my father like she's daring him to refuse grammar that hurts his teeth. My father's mouth tightens. He nods at the table, like he's prepared to endure a longer meeting than he wanted. I pour water. We sit. Richard clears his throat. "This has gotten out of hand," he says, as if someone else's hands are responsible. "We have no desire to escalate." "You began the escalation," I say, not unkindly. I think of Maribel's resume. I think of Olivia's soup. "You can also end it." Lila looks at me with something almost like curiosity, as if she's discovering adjectives for her eldest daughter that the family dictionary didn't list. "What would ending it look like to you?" "Boundaries," I say, "real ones, and an acknowledgement not in corporate speak that what you did was wrong." Richard stiffens. "I won't." "James," my mother says, and the James lands like a compromise, like a rope thrown to someone fighting a current. He looks at her, and for a moment, I see two people who loved each other enough to make the mistake of believing their love produced only wisdom. He sighs. "We shouldn't have used your name," he says, as if the sentence is an extraction. "It was expedient. And you paid for our expediency." The sentence is imperfect. It is also the truest thing he has said to me as an adult. The room seems to tilt a degree toward level. Bianca twists her rings. "I'm sorry I laughed," she says to the table. "About the bus." It was mean. The apology is both insufficient and a start. She glances up. I don't know how to do this without sounding like an idiot. "Try," I say. She tries. She stumbles. She finds words that are less about cars and more about the air we breathed for so long we didn't notice it was thin. I don't forgive her because forgiveness isn't a switch. It's a bridge under construction. But I mark the survey stakes in the ground. We don't solve anything monumental. There's no cinematic hug, no swelling score. They leave with their dignity intact and their storyline edited not by me, but by evidence. That night, for the first time since I left Massachusetts, I sleep 8 hours unbroken. In the morning, I make a decision that surprises even me. I text Bianca back. Coffee. Public place. Just us. Tomorrow at 2, 3 dots bloom and vanish, bloom and vanish. The old dance of an answer learning how to be honest. "Yes," she writes finally, "thank you." I close my eyes and picture a small bridge anchored on both banks, the middle still scaffold and rope. You don't drive across a bridge like that. You walk, slowly, with your hand on the rail. Outside, the rain returns, gentle and insistent. Somewhere a train threads the city again. I rinse my mug. I lace my boots. I step into the day I've made. Bianca is 10 minutes early to the cafe, which I take as a good omen. She stands when I walk in, then sits again, hands wrapped around a cup she's not drinking. "Thank you for coming." She says the words careful, like stepping onto a dock that moves. "I said I would." I answer. The table between us is small. It feels like an honest size. Silence scouts the perimeter. We let it. "I was awful," she says at last. Not just the bus joke. All of it. I liked being the favorite. It made everything easy, and it made me lazy. I didn't think about what it cost you because I never had to pay for anything. Not really. She searches my face and flinches anyway. "You don't owe me forgiveness. I just wanted to say it out loud." "I hear you," I say. It's the only sentence that doesn't pretend the past is tidy. I'm working on what forgiveness could even look like. It won't be fast. She nods, almost relieved to have a pace assigned. They offered to find another car. She adds a small cringe at the corner of her mouth. I told them not to, that it wasn't the point. I breathe out something I hadn't noticed I was holding. That helps, I say. We talk like people who grew up in the same house but only just met. About classes and roommates, about how our family can turn apology into performance, about hair braiding before school assemblies, and the way our mother's perfume still means hold your breath and be perfect. We make small agreements. We won't triangulate through our parents. We'll tell the truth without making the other person carry it home alone. We will try. When she leaves, she hugs me in the lobby under a poster for open mic night. "I want to do better," she whispers. "I don't know how, but I do." Trying is how I say. It's not poetry, but she nods like it's enough to start. The agency interview is 3 conversations and a case study that smells like pine and recycled paper. They ask what I learned in a family where attention was a currency. I say that you can build campaigns on dignity instead of scarcity, and they work longer. Someone smiles into their notebook like they've been waiting to hear that sentence. The offer arrives 2 days later. Strategist fair pay, real benefits projects. I can talk about without lowering my voice. I accept and walk to the river because my body needs a horizon big enough to hold the word yes. Peter meets me for coffee to sign a few straggling letters. The silence from their side is stable, he says. Strategic withdrawal. I can live with that, I tell him. We both know how expensive peace can be. That afternoon, I drive the BMW to a reputable dealer and watch a man in a branded jacket circle it with a clipboard. The appraisal is lower than a beau would suggest, but honest for the miles. I say yes. I transfer the title with a pen that clicks like a gavel and leave in a rideshare that smells like peppermint gum. 2 days later, I buy a practical hatchback with good tires and a stubborn engine. It is so unremarkable it feels like prayer. I set aside most of the difference in savings and use a piece of it to fund 6-month-long transit passes at the shelter's front desk. For job interviews, I tell the program lead. She squeezes my hand like I've set a password. That night back in my apartment, I lift the pink piggy bank down from the shelf. Its plastic is scuffed where the ba once rubbed it in the gift box. I slide a crisp bill in the slot my money, my meaning, and return it to its place. This is not spite. This is reclamation. A letter arrives from my mother, real pen on real paper. We should have asked. We should have trusted your answer. I'm sorry for the shape our love took. There's no legal maneuvering in the lines, no moral accounting, just a woman I know in pieces trying to make a sentence that doesn't hurt. I write back 3 paragraphs and a boundary. No financial entanglements. No surprise visits. If we talk about the past, we do it in a room where the truth is safe. I suggest a family session with a neutral counselor if they want it one day. I send the letter and do not check the mailbox like a gambler. Jessica throws a small dinner to celebrate the job, mismatched plates. Candles that lean like drunk uncles, a cake from a bakery that thinks in butter. Olivia brings soup because she is now the kind of friend who brings soup to everything. Someone clinks a glass and says a toast that loosens my ribs, to choosing yourself without choosing against others. To both and, after dishes, we sit on the floor and plan nothing hikes. We might take a plant swap, a yard sale. I look around at these people who know my worst days and show up anyway, and think not for the first time this is a kind of family too. Months turn under the soft machinery of routine. Mornings with coffee and emails I'm not scared to send. Afternoons spent building stories for organizations that plant trees and prevent evictions and teach kids to fix bikes. Wednesday nights at the shelter, where a woman named Arlene lands an interview and texts me a string of exclamation points that looks like fireworks. Occasional coffee with Bianca, who earns her apologies by keeping them small and frequent, who asks questions now and does not rank the answers. On a clear evening in December, 12 months since the bow, I walk past a dealership downtown. A car inside gleams under winter lights ribboned for a stranger. For a second, my stomach does the old drop. Then the feeling passes brief as a shadow. I keep walking, hands warm in my pockets. At home, I pull a dusty box from the closet and hang 2 paper snowflakes in the window with tape. The apartment smells like orange peel and clean laundry. On the shelf, the pig sits like a witness who chose to stay. I don't hide it. I don't throw it away. It reminds me that the sharpest gifts sometimes arrive wrapped in insult, and that we get to decide what they mean. My phone buzzes a picture from Bianca of a campus courtyard lit with strings of white. "Hot chocolate tonight," she writes. No agendas. I text back, yes, and boundaries, and a snowflake emoji because sometimes words should be simple. Before I leave, I lock the door and check the windows the way I always do. Outside, the rain has started again, soft, insistent, the city's metronome. I step into it without flinching. This is the part of the story where nothing explodes and everything matters. No red bow, no courtroom drama. Just a woman walking down her block toward a life she picked, carrying a keyring with exactly the keys she needs. The ending isn't a finish line, it's a threshold. I cross it. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. I'll see you next time as we continue exploring more journeys and lessons together.